think we are live, Lisa.
I think so too. Oh, hello there. How are you on the West Coast?
Well, I am fine here on the West Coast, Lisa. How are you on the East Coast?
Hot. It is hot here on the East Coast to me. I see some people on Facebook talking about, oh, it's too cold. And I'm like, where? We live in the same city. So, I guess maybe I have my own personal heatness or whatever you want to call it, heater. So, but it's beautiful here. It's a beautiful day. It's warm, it's sunny, and I'm happy.
Well, good for you. Yeah, we're getting. What am I doing? We're getting a little bit of a heat wave.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, we've got a cool down today. So, but it's only cooling down to about 70 degrees.
Oh, okay.
So then the next 2 days, we're going to go up to 100. So.
Whoa. Oh, my goodness. No, we're like 40, 50, high 40s, 50s in the low. And then we go up. But, I love living here in Hotlanta. I love the weather here. I do.
Well, welcome everybody that's joining us as we talk about the weather, where we're at, because we're on different coasts.
Yes.
I'm on the West Coast.
And I'm on the East Coast.
And that's why we call this show Coast to
Coast. Beauty.
Yeah. So today we're talking about something a little bit more hot topic than generally. We try to keep it light, but this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And domestic violence is something that's very dear to my heart because I've worked in that field for many, many years. I actually grew up in a very violent home where everybody hit everybody. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Everybody hit everybody. There were no boundaries on that. Mom and dad fought every weekend after, that was just what happened. Sometimes the kids got hit in the interim of all that, and then sometimes the kids were the subject of that. So that was not a field that I actually envisioned myself going into. But God works in very mysterious ways, and that has become a passion for me, and particularly teaching parents how to deal with anger and not teach that to their children to go on and then produce a whole nother generation of violence. So we'll talk more about that. But Lisa, what do you want to bring in on that topic at all?
Well, I came from a city, a town, I believe, where fighting was just part of the fabric of the town, little town. And I think, if it's in the home, it's kind of, it's not in the streets, it's hidden a little bit. And sometimes it's deliberately hidden a lot. But where I grew up, everybody fought. I mean, everybody fought at school. The kids fought at school. They saw their parents fight at home. They, grown-ups fought in the streets. And so violence was not, unfortunately, if you live in an environment where everybody thinks fighting is okay, if you are a victim of that, you find very few ears that will look at you as a victim, very few people that will look at you with sympathy and offer help, very little resources in order to help you get out of that situation. So that in itself was the backdrop for me. And then as an adult, I found myself in an environment where there was extreme violence in relationship.
Right. Okay. So if you had that background, that's not an unusual situation. So you don't necessarily look for someone who doesn't fit that mold. In fact, if you were raised in a violent home, typically you're going to, it's like 70% chance that you're going to get into a violent relationship. unless you learn some other skills.
Mm-hmm. For me, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I got it from my parents, as far as I said, like the whole city, everybody, did it. But I had something in my life that happened that actually made a difference to me. I lived the first 4 to 5 years of my life with my grandmom, who was a registered nurse at the time when, and she had a job that was reserved only for Caucasians, but she was a Black woman who could pass as white. And so she had this high powered job, and she had resources. My grandmother mom was an entrepreneur on the side. She had businesses on the side. She owned properties that she rented out. And so because I lived in that environment for the first years of my life, and because even afterward, I would regularly go back to visit that environment, I got to see another side. She didn't tolerate violence. It was never in her home. It was never laughed at. She didn't poo-poo it away. She didn't say it was okay, because she worked in the hospital where she saw the results of it. So from that, when I went back to live with my mom in an environment where, fighting was just the norm, I had something to contrast it with. I now could see that there are actually people who live in a way that doesn't that don't tolerate that, and the way that is not acceptable and is not the norm. So because of that, I didn't find it acceptable. But what happened is I was considered the outsider, the outcast, the troublemaker, because I did not condone that. And so I got things like, oh, you think you're better than us. You think you're rich. You think you're, dare I say, white. You think you're too good. You think you're this, because I wanted a different environment for my life than the environment of violence. But when you live when everybody around you think it's okay, it's hard to be the lone wolf standing out there against the world, so to speak. So yeah, I found myself in that environment.
And that's kind of what happened with me. Is as a kid, you see things happening, and you either incorporate that into, yes, that's just the way it is, or no, I'm going to go the absolute opposite. So I didn't even spank my children, and that's I heard so many criticisms on that what you think you think you're white. Why, that's not the way Black people raise their children, and this, that, and the other. But I wanted to have a clear distinction that is not acceptable. There are other means of discipline, and there are other ways of resolving conflict. And that was something that I was very adamant about, especially after starting to work in that field. And that's one thing that I found, Lisa, is that a lot of times people just didn't have the skills.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the skills to know how to do it differently. If you don't learn a specific way of doing it absolutely differently, you are going to fall into the same trap that your parents are in, as far as parenting, as far as relationships, everything, because you just don't know. And I know, so for me, with working with specifically, I worked predominantly with the perpetrators, which of course were going to be more men. And many of them did not want to hit their spouse, but they didn't know how to do anything else. They didn't know what to do with those feelings. They didn't know how to resolve the anger. And then we as women, we know to push and push and push. Not saying that at all is giving permission, because it's not. I mean, it takes two to tango, but once somebody throws a punch, that person's that's the problem, is the punch. I'd hear guys say, I asked them, well, why are you here? Because what would happen is they'd come into my program after being arrested and they'd have to spend a year with me, which should have been punishment enough, but nevertheless. So for a year, they would be in class, and it would, I'd start off with, well, what brings you here? And well, the police came to my house. Okay. Why did the police come to their house? And they couldn't even really internalize that, there was something I did that caused that to happen. Cause and effect. So I saw a lot of guys who really weren't bad people and loved their family, but they just really did not have the skills to know how to step back, walk away, how to talk to the person to be resolved. It was unfair, is what it is. It's unfair that we as parents aren't able to get it together to model that appropriate behavior for our kids.
I have. Oh my goodness! Do you hear the echo?
Echo?
Yes. Yeah. I have an echo. Do you hear it?
No, I don't hear it. It could be me.
It went away. Okay, so a couple of things you just said. You talked about spanking children. I did spank mine, but and that is a whole different subject that there's always going to be people on both sides of the spectrum, and there's nobody that can say my way is right and your way is wrong, or your way is right and my way is wrong. That's all totally individual as to family, because I have seen parents that go too far, and I haven't seen parents that didn't go far enough, because I've met some kids in the street and thought, oh, he needs a spanking, but or something. But that aside, but back to what you were saying about some of the men being victims, you saw a lot of that. And there, I believe, after doing working with the situation over many years and seeing a lot of it over many years, that there are some men who get into it. They react the way that they have been taught to react in their environment, and then later they're like, "Oh, what happened? What did I do? I'm not the monster. You must have done something to make me," or whatever. But there are also situations where there's extreme violence, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he meant to do it, and he is a violent person that is beyond redemption in that area. Okay, spending 20 years.
And let me tell you that clearly, when we would do an assessment in the beginning and come to that conclusion, we would send them back to court and say, this is not an appropriate solution.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, okay. There were people. I remember one example. This guy sitting here telling me, just with no grimace, no remorse on his face and his voice and all, how he actually inflicted an abortion on his wife sexually. No, that's not appropriate for outpatient treatment. No. There are people, there were many of, I'm not at all saying that the ones that hit were victims in that situation. What I am saying is that it came from someplace. I had this one guy who came in, told us, no, I never saw violence in my home. No, nothing, never. No, I don't know where that came from. It was just this one time. And always in the assessment, it was always just the one time. And we, by law, were obligated to make contact with the victim. So we'd hear both sides of the stories, and they vastly differ. But this particular guy, he maintained till he completed our program that he never saw violence growing up, that this was a one-time thing. He never broke that down. Usually by 6 months, they would give it up. Yeah, okay. But about 3 months after he completed our program, I'm sitting on the bed and the news happened to be on, because my husband is a news freak. And I don't know why I hadn't changed it yet, because I'm not. And he was asleep. And this man's family, his name came up on the news, had been murdered by his father and his mother. He and his mother had been murdered. And I was like, what? So I actually pulled this chart. I called the phone number that I had for him, and one of his siblings answered, and they said, I am so glad you called because we really wanted to get in touch with you. So he starts telling me how they would have to duck out the door all the time from shots being fired at them, that this is the way they grew up. So, yeah, that just left me speechless, really. I mean, even now I'm speechless on what to say, because it really touched me that he would go that whole year and still maintain that this was not what he grew up in.
Wow.
And he didn't, it was very difficult.
I can imagine. I will say this. My case, I know that there's different levels of violence. And but one thing I truly believe is that if a man can hit you, he can kill you. If he will hit you, he will kill you. If he gets provoked enough to hit you, he can be provoked enough to kill you. I could be, now somebody will argue me down and say that's not true, but I will stand by that because of my experience. As I said, I have been involved, the recipient of extreme violence. I have been involved in situations where I was shot at, and the bullet went so close to my ear that I heard it whistling going by. Okay. So unless you've ever been in that situation, you don't know that a bullet has a sound. It whistles as it goes by. I know that I started arching my eyebrows because somebody threw a knife at me and it grazed one of my, right above one of my eyes. The other one, I have stitches in because I got punched so hard that it split open. So I didn't start doing my brows, because I thought, oh, I just want to pluck my brows and make them cute. I had to make them even because of the stitches that was in both. Yeah. I was married to a man. And when you're in that situation, Sharen, when we were talking about covering this subject, and I thought, okay, it's been so many years ago, I can handle it. But there was a point in time where this chill started at the top of my head and went all the way down to my toes, full body chill. And I thought, wow, I thought I was far enough away from that situation for it to never have an effect on me again. But you know what? The brain never forgets the terror, of the fear, the adrenaline of being in a situation like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my situation, I was married to a person who would come home and I would be awakened with pins sticking me, pins, or I would come awake with ice water, a pitcher of ice water thrown on me, just jerked up out of a deep sleep, like ice water, or jerk up out of a deep sleep with somebody grabbed the mattress and dumped me out of the bed and I hit the floor, bam. And that's how I wake up. And my reaction to it, the people that were in my life was, well, just don't fight back and, it'll be over soon. Or you made your bed, lie in it. Or you know what? You learned how to fight when you were a child. You don't need no help. And the situation went on longer than, looking back, I don't know why it went on so long, except for you always think during the good times, they're so good that maybe I imagined it was as bad as it was, or maybe it was me. And nobody else is saying that it's him. Maybe it is me. And if this man goes out in the street and tell people that you are his heart, he breathed for you, his family is the most important thing on earth, And then you're trying to reconcile that person in the street to the person that stands there and runs your head into a sheetrock wall and leave a hole in it. You wonder if you are crazy.
Yeah.
So my way of dealing with it was I went to the library because I didn't know where to go for resources. I went to the library. I started checking out VHS tapes. I started checking out tapes and books on self-defense and trying to teach myself self-defense. And then it got to the point where I started buying weapons. And I'm going to say this, I won't say what kind of weapons I bought, but I started buying weapons, and the answer is plural, because I was so afraid. I had to have a weapon in every room just in case the fight started in that room. I couldn't get to the other room. I had to have them there. And then and then I had the occasion to use one. And I thought, yeah, how does it feel? You're the one in the hospital now. And it was such a gleeful feeling that I had to check myself. I said, you know what, Lisa? There's only two eventualities for the path that you are on now. Either he's going to kill you and he's going to go to prison, and then your children, our children, are going to be a ward of the system. Or you're going to kill him and then you're going to go to jail, prison, and your kids are still going to be a ward of the system. And I was like, no, I cannot do that to my children. I cannot take any choice that will put them in a situation that I wouldn't want them to be in. I cannot make any choice that would give them less than they deserve. I cannot make any choice that will give me less than I deserve, because I don't deserve this. And I had made the decision with a 6-week-old, a 1-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and no job, to leave. And I got minimum job waitressing for $2 an hour plus tips. And then convenience stores from 11 to 7, so I didn't have to pay childcare. And I'm not going to kid you, it was hard, and especially when the people around you don't support you. Right. But it was the choice that I made. Now, I know that there are women out there who feel that there's no way out. They don't feel like there are any good choices. But I know that in this day and age, there are way more resources than there were when I was going through my situation. And I know that there's an answer. You can't do it alone. You got to find somebody to help you. You can't do it alone.
And I actually posted some resources for the National Hotline for Domestic Violence, but also there's a couple of specific things that I want to get across here, is that if you are living in that kind of situation, then you need and you choose to stay right now, you need a safety plan. You can go online and find them. And in fact, a lot of the browsers make it so convenient, because we know that what happens is a batterer will monitor everything you do. Who are you talking to? What are you looking at online? What are you talking about on the phone with this person? So the browsers will actually, when you go and look up resources for some of them, I know Edge will do it. I'm not sure about, I think Google, I'm pretty sure Google, that they will erase the cookies on that. But you can look up resources for domestic violence and the cookies will be not traceable, so that you can actually get those resources. They also will pop up something and give you a phone number saying that if you're being monitored, call this number. But a safety plan that allows you to let people know when you need help, let your children know how you're going to escape when you choose to, how to put aside money, small objects that you can take with you that you can sell, so that when you left, if you'd have had like a bag of stash full of jewelry or cameras or small little things that you can take and sell to, is going to help you. So a safety plan, not only for home, but for work, because how many times do we hear on the news where the guy shows up, shoots up everybody at work too?
Oh my God, me.
Yeah. So that is a major thing. Your employers, I know you don't want to let everybody know, but have somebody there that you can trust, that can screen your calls, that can know what to do to help you when and at whichever time you decide to do that. And the important part about that is that nowadays, what was so heartbreaking for me is seeing women who chose to stay, which, and I'm not, because leaving is not easy. Lisa just described that. It is not easy. But staying, I've seen women where their children were actually removed because they stayed. And they were charged with what's called failure to protect. That's heartbreaking. But the fact is that you have to protect the children in some way. As an adult who grew up in that, as Lisa's describing the sounds of the bullet and all that, I can put myself in the situation of just being huddled with my 4 sisters and brothers, in the dark, hearing my parents scuffling across the floor and things breaking and so forth, and the crying and all of those sounds never leave a child, never leave someone who is trauma. That's an internal trauma that never goes away. Never goes away. That sound, that feeling, the smells, the sight, all of that is right there. So I also just so grateful for you, Lisa, especially because you had sons, because I saw so many times when the sons, they didn't, as I said, didn't know any other way to do it. And they either chose to go ahead and take out their father to protect their mother, or they go on into that life themselves. Statistics tell us that when the police come to your home on the 5th time, it's a homicide. When it's domestic violence involved, on the 5th time, it's a homicide. So it's not something that we want to play around with. It is a serious thing. But if you're going to stay, have a safety plan. That's the best thing I could say to you.
Let me expound on that a little bit. I did do that. I remember being pregnant with my 3rd child. I said when I left, I had a 6-week-old. That wasn't by accident. By the time I had my 3rd child, I thought, oh, well, he's not gonna hit me while I'm pregnant. And was I wrong? So I was like, that's when I made up my mind. I was like, I got to get out of this. And so I started planning then. 9 months, 6 weeks. I started planning, and it wasn't just a contingency plan. Mine was a solid exit plan. And so I did. I started putting away money. And yes, I worked a 11 to 7 job, but he would show up on my job and he would say, let me speak to you outside. And if I didn't go outside, I knew he was going to start in there. So it was either let him start in there and get caught on camera and lose my job, or walk outside and see what happened. And so, especially on payday, it was never a payday he didn't show up at my job, because if you control the money, you control the woman. So I would then have this little part-time job waitressing while he was away. And tips you can stash away. I only waitress during lunchtime. I was back home later. And so I had this plan. I knew what I was going to do. I made arrangements to sell stuff in the house. I was like, I'll let you know when it's ready. And so I knew. The thing is, I did tell him I'm leaving, but he, you know what, laughed. Where are you going to go? You actually called me the little old lady who lived in the shoe. Where you gonna go? You little old lady who lives in the shoe with so many children, you don't know what to do. And so he didn't think I was going to be able to do it, but I was able to get that done. But the point is, a plan, and it had to be alone. And it wasn't a perfect plan, but it was something I could live with. Right. And it was something that was absolutely, it was when you start looking at the plans and you think, I'm gonna leave all this to go to that. The thing is, you only either going to leave this and go to that, or you're going to leave this and end up in the grave, more than likely, because violence always escalates. I'm sorry. It didn't start out as a punch or a pin, the dumping out of the bed. It didn't start out like that. It started out just verbally arguing. Then it morphed to a shove. Then it moved from a shove to a hit. Then went from a hit to a full out punch, like you would punch a man. I mean, just all power. 6'6", 240 pounds worth of power behind it coming at you. Okay.
Right.
That's what it morphed into. And so you might think it's not that bad. If he doesn't get help and you don't get out, it's very, very likely to keep morphing until it gets to extreme violence. Sometimes it starts out as that, but more than likely it starts small and escalates.
And don't excuse the excuse that, oh, I was drinking. Oh, I was, on drugs.
You were drinking.
Because it doesn't matter. You dead is dead. Doesn't matter why. Okay. How the person got to that. People do under the influence only what they would have done or have thought about doing when they weren't under the influence. You don't go and act out totally out of something you never even envisioned. So, that's not an excuse. That means that they need to deal with two issues at the same time: violence and substance abuse.
Substance abuse. Okay. Because it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be both. And any number of things. Everybody's situation is different, but everybody's situation is the same. In that, the details of how you got there, the details of how you're going to get away might be all different. But the details of the situation, the situation you're in is the sameness. It is still domestic violence. It is still violence. And you are still in danger. And if there are kids involved, the kids are in danger. I'm sorry. But statistics also prove that they usually will morph into hitting the kids if they start out with the wife inappropriately. I'm not saying you can't spank a child. That's a whole different subject. I'm just saying that violence against the wife or the partner in the situation often morphs into violence against the kids. Okay. Because
and to control you. And what better way to control you than by using your kids, your finances, your relationships, telling you that you're nothing, you can't do this, who would want you? I mean, all of those things are various forms of abuse that happen that all come under that one umbrella. And there's a cycle to it. Like you said, it's not always bad. I mean, the abuse, actually, the violence itself may be just a small sliver of time, but it's powerful enough to keep you in line.
Yeah.
Keep you in control of this person.
Yeah, it is. It is. So one thing is hiding it and covering up is enabling him to keep doing it. And then, normally if a man like that ends up out of one bad relationship where he's abusive, he go right into another relationship where he's abusive. So you're just letting him off the hook to go and victimize on somebody else. And so I would encourage you to start somewhere. Like Sharen said, if you can go to the hot spots, free hot spots at every McDonald's, free hot spots at every every corner store has a free hot spot, every coffee shop, every little fast food restaurant. And if you don't know how to delete your cookies, you can learn, or you can go to the library and use their the library was my savior. You can go to the library and use their computers. And so, this was before the days of computer. I had to do research the old fashioned way in the card box, but there is help. The first thing you got to do is decide you want it. And that decision is the most important part of this whole discussion. Okay. The most important part of this whole discussion is you decide that you're going to do something, even if you don't know what it is, that you're going to make a change, that you're going to get yourself into a better place and a better situation. That is the one thing that you can do for yourself and the people that you love, is to make that decision. And hopefully you found something here today to help you make that decision. And I do have one other thing I want to say, but Sharen, you go first.
Yeah, I wanted to add this, even though I know we're going long, is that I want to encourage people who look at the services for domestic violence, is that right now in California anyway, and I believe that in most states, that services monies that are allocated for domestic violence cannot be used towards the treatment of the perpetrator, meaning the person who's actually doing the violence. And what Lisa said about they leave one relationship and go into another is that here's the scoop, is that you have a guy that generally is going to have up to 5 victims in his lifetime. Now, that's only the woman or the significant other in the relationship. That doesn't include the kids. That doesn't include the brother that may have came over to try to help you, the neighbor down the street. And you put all those in there with that if you think about it, if you do provide services for the perpetrator, you are saving so many other people in the process. That's just my little.
And I will say, most of us who are caught in this situation is with a person that we love. We don't want to see this person go to jail. We don't want to see this person lose their job. We don't want to see this person, receive anything bad, because we love them. And so it's a constant battle between your very life and your way of being and your love for this person. So if there were programs out there that could help them, even if you know for a fact, I know that by the time I decided to leave, I didn't care if this person became a saint. That relationship was done. Okay. But I really wish that he could get some resources to help him, so he didn't take that into another relationship. And so you're right. The resources out there are very few and far between. They have a few anger management classes, but usually you don't get those until you are in court having hurt someone. But there are very few resources, but there are lots of resources for women. And there are places that can get you out of there if you make the decision at a moment's notice. There are some places that can say, grab your stuff and be out the back door in 2 minutes, and we're going to meet you on the corner. There are some places like that, but you got to know where they are first. Okay. So go ahead and get that information. Even if you don't think you're ever going to use it, get it. Emergency. Okay.
Yeah. I was able to set that up with that time that you talked about, that I was getting off the phone to help somebody. That's what it was. I was setting up a situation in Texas for this woman to get to a shelter out here, because she was afraid to go to a shelter locally because he had already shot her brother. So the police actually, I was able to get the shelter here, to get the police station at that location. They stood there for an hour for her to pack up, took them to the bus station, got them on a bus, and got her 4 children out here.
Okay.
So, there are resources to help you. They will go.
Yeah.
You're worth it. Yeah,
you're worth it. And so, you know what, for me, I actually got myself to another state. Not because, once I got out of it, I'll be honest. Once I showed that I was willing to hurt him back, he backed off a little bit. Only when he got to drinking, he got that courage. Then I knew if I meet this joker in the street and he's been drinking, I'm going to have to be strapped, because it's going to be on. And I wanted to remove myself from that situation. That's how I ended up in Atlanta. That's how I met you, Sharen. If he had been such a bad person, I would never have met you. So I don't feel like a victim. Okay. I feel like that was just a part of my journey. You talked about in another earlier episode that rock bottom could be the foundation that you need to build the most incredible life that you can ever imagine. And that's what happened to me. Rock bottom, with that violence and all of the other pieces that came with it. And it would take 100 shows like this to cover half of it. But rock bottom was what I used as the foundation to give myself a new start, new city, new job. And yes, it wasn't easy getting on a Greyhound bus to come to Atlanta to interview and to put a jobs application in and interview, teaching myself a skill so that I would have something marketable. My husband asked me yesterday, he was like, where did you learn how to do that? And I said, I took a free class at a little elementary school down the street from the house that I had to walk to. I saw a board on the a little ad on a bulletin board in the local library, which is my heart. I hope nothing ever happens to local libraries. And I saw this little bulletin that says, learn Microsoft Office Suite. had no idea what Microsoft was, what Office Suite was. It just said free classes, and I'm a learning freak. So I pulled one of those little tear off tags and went in there. And now, over the years, I built on that. I'm what you consider a document specialist, the whole Office Suite. So just from that little environment, you know, I've always learned to keep my skills up so that I would be able to use them to help myself and help others. But my final message is, being a victim is a choice. Staying a victim, becoming a victim is beyond your control. Staying a victim is a choice. It simply is. And you can choose a different path. And I look at my life now, I'm Beauty Boss Lisa. And so, you know, I could joke about from, you know, domestic violence victim to beauty boss. And it wouldn't be a bad joke. It would be the truth. So you can build another, and the direct sales industry and being an entrepreneur is a great job that you don't have to have any skills for. You don't have to have very little money to get started. And sometimes you can get started for free, and you could be making money that's untraceable for time being. You know, I'm not saying don't pay Uncle Sam. I'm just saying that, you know, you could be making money that's untraceable, and you could be having some choices in your toolbox that who knows when you're going to need them. Mm-hmm. And so just make a decision. If you find yourself in this situation, or if you know of somebody in this situation, please direct them to this broadcast. And, you know, maybe we will have been of service or help to someone. If we can help one person, just one person, today's broadcast was absolutely worth it.
Right. And the rest of the month, I will be continuing to post resources on Coast to Coast. So check back, and please, as Lisa said, share the broadcast out. That helps us to build our viewership, as well as helping people to deal with situations such as this. And we just appreciate you guys being here. We appreciate our replay viewers so much, because we know that we broadcast at a time that a lot of people are at work and so forth, but we can't stay awake really long because we're old. So we're putting it here, and you can come and check it out and refer it out to whoever, you know, to just share it, because you may not know who needs it. You know, you really may not know. Domestic violence is a silent epidemic. It's the most underreported crime, and we're going so over, but
it's okay.
You know, we felt led to do this. And even though one of my former colleagues said, you know, you're not going to get a lot of people that are going to come on. He said there are going to be a lot of people watch it, but they're not going to come on at first because they're going to be afraid. But you have to do it. So, and she was so like right on target. But I kind of knew that too. But this was something we had to do.
Yes, I remember when you said to me, "I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing," and I said, I will. I don't know what I'm going to say, because if I practice it or try to make bullet points or bullet notes, I'll lose my nerve. I'll freak out. And so I just had to bring my heart to the broadcast. And so I'm glad, I'm glad we did it. And I just know in my heart, I know somebody needed to hear this, and I know that it's going to get to them, because when the person is ready, the resources appear. Okay, now get off before you make me cry.
So this is your West Coast beauty, Sharen Davis.
And this is your East Coast beauty, Lisa Washington.
And we are closing down another absolutely awesome episode of
Coast
to Coast
Beauty.
So you guys have a great day, and share out the broadcast. And we love you and appreciate you all. Bye-bye.